You know what time it is. Woo! Oh, okay, so a couple of things. Hold on. There we go. Woo! Get into it! Get into it! Yes! Period! Hold on, I gotta go pick up my medicine off the floor. Hold on. Hold on. Ah! Falling apart, y'all. I'm sorry. Trying to get stuff together. My bad. Hold on. Hold on. What? All my medicine. Pardon me. Alright. We are back. We are back with Storytime with Chris. Hi, hi, hi. Alright, that sounds a lot better. Hi, y'all. Welcome back to Storytime with Chris. And we are starting the second book in the Prydain Chronicles by Lloyd Alexander. And it is called The Black Cauldron. As I said in my previous video, in the last chapter of the Book of Three, I accidentally got my chronological orders of the books in this series mixed up. I originally had said that the Castle of Lear was the second book, when in reality it's the third book. The Black Cauldron is the second book, so I do apologize for that mishap. Alright, but of course I don't own the music that you're listening to in the background. Sorry about my previous video, I was having some technical issues, but it's now fixed. So, last time we were in this world, Taran was able to return to Caer Dallben and was able to be greeted by Cole as well as Dallben himself. But now, Caer Dallben has some new residents, which is the Princess Eilonwy and Gurgi and Taran. So we're about to find out what happens next in the next adventure of the Prydain Chronicles. Oh. I was like, I know I had an eyelash on here. Hold on. Okay. Chapter 1. The Council at Caer Dallben. Autumn had come too swiftly in the northernmost realms of Prydain. Many trees were already leafless, and among the branches clung the ragged shapes of empty nests. To the south, across the river, Great Avrin, the hills shielded Caer Dallben from the winds, but even here the little farm was drawing in on itself. For Taran, the summer was ending before it had begun. That morning Dallben had given him the task of washing the oracular pig. Had the old enchanter ordered him to capture a full-grown gwaith, Taran would gladly have set out after one of the vicious winged creatures. As it was, he filled the bucket at the well and trudged reluctantly to Henwen's enclosure. The white pig, usually eager for a bath, now squealed nervously and rolled on her back in the mud. Busy struggling to raise Henwen to her feet, Taran did not notice the horseman until he had reined up at the pen. "You there, pig boy!" The rider, looking down at him, was a youth only a few years older than Taran. His hair was tawny, his eyes black and deep-set, and a pale, arrogant face. Though of excellent quality, his garments had seen much wear, and his cloak was purposefully draped to hide his threadbare attire. The cloak itself, Taran saw, had been neatly and painstakingly mended. He sat astride a roan mare, a lean and nervous steed speckled red and yellow, with a long, narrow head, whose expression was as ill-tempered as his master's. "You, pig boy," he repeated, "is this Caer Dallben?" The horseman's tone and bearing nettled Taran, but he curbed his temper and bowed courteously. "It is," he replied, "but I am not a pig boy," he added. "I am Taran, assistant pig-keeper." "A pig is a pig," said the stranger, "and a pig boy is a pig boy. Run and tell your master I am here," he ordered. "Tell him that Prince Elendir, son of Penlarkha, Henwen seized this opportunity to roll into another puddle. "Stop that, Hen!" Taran cried, hurrying after her. "Leave off that sow," Elendir commanded. "Did you not hear me? Do as I say and be quick about it." "Tell Dallben yourself," Taran called over his shoulder, trying to keep Henwen from the mud, "or wait until I've done with my own work." "Mind your impudence," Elendir answered, "or you shall have a good beating for it." Taran flushed. Leaving Henwen to do as she pleased, he strode quickly to the railing and climbed over. "If I do," he answered hotly, throwing back his head and looking Elendir full in the face, "it will not be at your hands." Elendil gave a scornful laugh. Before Tarn could spring aside, the rowan plunged forward. Elendil, leaning from the saddle, seized Tarn by the front of the jacket. Tarn flailed his arms and legs vainly. Strong as he was, he could not break free. He was pummeled and shaken until his teeth rattled. Elendil then urged the rowan into a gallop, hauled Tarn across the turf to the cottage, and there, while chickens scattered in every direction, tossed him roughly to the ground. The commotion brought Dallben and Cole outdoors. The Princess Eilonwy hurried from the scullery, her apron flying and a cookpot still in her hand. With a cry of alarm, she ran to Tarn's side. Elendil, without troubling to dismount, called to the white-bearded enchanter. "Are you Dallben? I have brought your pig boy to be thrashed for his insolence." Said Dallben, unperturbed by Elendil's furious expression. "Whether he is insolent is one thing, and whether he should be thrashed is another. In either case, I need no suggestions from you. I am Prince of Penlarka. Penlarkau. There we go, Penlarkau," cried Elendil. Yes, Dallben interrupted with a wave of his bitter hand. "I am quite aware of all that, and too busy to be concerned with it. Go water your horse and your temper at the same time. You shall be called when you are wanted." Elendil was about to reply, but the enchanter's stern glance made him hold his tongue. He turned the rowan and urged her toward the stable. Princess Eilonwy and the stout, bald-headed Cole, meantime, had been helping Tarn pick himself up. "You should know better, my boy, than to quarrel with strangers," said Cole good-naturedly.
"That's true enough," Eilonwy added, "especially if they're on horseback and you're on foot."
"Next time I meet him," Tarn began. "When you meet him again," said Dallben, "you at least shall conduct yourself with as much restraint and dignity as possible, which I allow may not be very great, but you shall have to make do with it. Be off now. The Princess Eilonwy can help you be a little more presentable than you are at the moment." In the lowest of spirits, Tarn followed the golden-haired girl to the scullery. He still smarted more than from Elendil's words than from the drubbing, and he was hardly pleased that Eilonwy had seen him sprawled at the feet of the arrogant prince.
"How did it happen?"
Eilonwy asked, picking up a damp cloth and applying it to Tarn's face. Tarn did not answer, but glumly submitted to her care. Before Eilonwy had finished, a hairy figure covered with leaves and twigs popped up at the window and with great agility clambered over the sill. "Woe and sadness!" the creature wailed, loping anxiously to Tarn. "Gurgi sees smackings and whackings by strengthful lord. Poor kindly master, Gurgi is sorry for him." "But there is news," Gurgi hurried on. "Good news. Gurgi also sees mightiest of princes riding. Yes, with great gallopings on white horse with black sword. What joy!" "What's that?" cried Tarn. "Do you mean Prince Gwydion? It can't be." "It is," said a voice behind him. "It is." Gwydion stood in the doorway. With a shout of amazement, Tarn ran forward and clasped his hand. Eilonwy threw her arms about the tall warrior, while Gurgi joyfully pounded the floor. The last time Tarn had seen him, Gwydion wore the raiment of the Prince of the Royal House of Dawn. Now he was dressed simply in a hooded cloak of grey and a coarse, unadorned jacket. The black sword Dernwyn hung at his side. "Well met, all of you," said Gwydion. "Gurgi looks as hungry as ever, Eilonwy prettier than ever, and you, assistant pigkeeper?" he added, his lined and weathered face breaking into a smile, "a little the worse for wear. Dallben has mentioned how you came by those bruises." "I sought no quarrel," Tarn declared. "But one found you nonetheless," Gwydion said. "I think that must be the way of it with you, Tarn of Caer Dallben. No matter," he said, stepping back and studying Tarn closely through green-flecked eyes. "Let me look at you. You have grown since we last met." Gwydion nodded his shaggy wolf-gray head in approval. "I hope you have gained as much wisdom as height. We shall see. Now, I must make ready for the council." "Council?" Tarn cried. "Dallben said nothing of a council. He did not even say you were coming here."
The truth is, Eilonwy put in, Dolben hasn't been saying much of anything to anybody.
You should understand by now, said Gwydion, that of what he knows, Dolben tells little. Yes, there is to be a council, and I have summoned others to meet us here. I'm old enough to sit in a council of men, Taran interrupted excitedly. I've learned much. I fought at your side. I have... Gently, gently, Gwydion said. We have agreed you shall have a place. Though manhood, he added softly with a trace of sadness, may not be all that you believe. Gwydion put his hands on Taran's shoulders. Meanwhile, stand ready. Your task will be given soon enough. As Gwydion had foretold, the rest of the morning brought many new arrivals. A company of horsemen soon appeared and began to make camp in the subtle field beyond the orchard. The warriors Taran saw were armed for battle. His heart leapt. Surely! This too had to do with Gwydion's counsel. His head spun with questions, and he hurried toward the field. Sorry about that. He had not gone halfway when he stopped short in great surprise. Two familiar figures were riding up the pathway. Taran raced to meet them. "Fflewddur!" he called, while the bard, his beautiful harp slung over his shoulder, raised a hand in greeting. "And Dolly, is that you?" The crimson-haired dwarf swung down from his pony. He grinned broadly for an instant, then assumed his customary scowl. It's like this. There it is. Just scowling all the time. Smiling. He did not, however, conceal the glint of pleasure in his round red eyes. "Dolly!" Taran clapped the door from the back. "I never thought I'd see you again. That is, really, see you, now after you gain the power to be invisible." "Humph!" snorted the leather-jacket dwarf. "Invisible? I've had all I want of that. Do you realize the effort it takes? Terrible! It makes my ears ring. And that's not the worst of it. Nobody can see you, so you get your toes stepped on and an elbow jabbed in your eye. No, not for me. I can't stand it anymore." "And you, Fflewddur," Taran cried as the bard dismounted. "I've missed you. Do you know what the council is about? And that's why you're here, isn't it? And Dolly, too?" "I know nothing about councils," muttered Dolly. "King Ideled commanded me to come here. A special favor to Gwydion. But I can tell you right now I'm rather be back home in the realm of the fair folk, minding my own business." "In my case," said the bard, "Gwydion happened to be passing through my kingdom, purely by chance it seemed, though now I'm beginning to think it wasn't. He suggested I might enjoy stopping down at Caer Dallben. He said good old Dolly was going to be there, so of course I set out immediately." "I've given up being a bard," Fflewddur continued, "and had settled quite happily as a king again. Really, it was only to oblige Gwydion." At this, two strings of the harp snapped with a resounding twang. Fflewddur stopped immediately and cleared his throat. "Yes, well," he added, "the truth of it is, I was perfectly miserable. I'd have taken any excuse to get out of that damp, dismal castle for a while. A council, you say? I was hoping it might be a harvest festival, and I'd be needed to provide the entertainment." "Whatever it is," Taran said, "I'm glad you're both here." "I'm not," grumbled the dwarf. "When they start talking about good old Dolly this and good old Dolly that, watch out. It's for something disagreeable." As they made their way to the cottage, Fflewddur looked around with interest. Well, do I see King Smote's banner over there? He's here at Gwydion's request, too, I have no doubt." Just then a horseman cantered up and called to Fflewddur by name. The bard gave a cry of pleasure. "That's Adion, son of the chief bard Taliesin," he told Taran. "Caer Dallben is indeed honored today." The rider dismounted, and Fflewddur hastened to present his companions to him. Adion, Taran saw, was tall, with straight black hair that fell to his shoulders. Though of noble bearing, he wore the garb of an ordinary warrior, with no ornament save a curiously shaped iron brooch at his collar. His eyes were gray, strangely deep, clear as a flame, and Taran sensed that little was hidden from Adion's thoughtful and searching glance. "Well met, Taran of Caer Dallben, and Dolly of the fair folk," said Adion, clasping their hands in turn. Your names are not unknown among the bards of the north." "Then you too are a bard?" asked Taran, bowing with great respect. Adion smiled and shook his head. "Many times my father has asked me to present myself for initiation, but I choose to wait. There is still much I hope to learn, and in my own heart I do not feel myself ready. One day, perhaps, I shall be ready." Adion turned to Fluter. "My father sends greetings and asks how you fared with the harp he gave you. I can see it wants repair," he added with a friendly laugh. "Yes," admitted Fluter, "I do have trouble with it now and again. I can't help adding a little color to the facts. Most facts need it so badly, but every time I do," he sighed, looking at the two broken strings, "this is the result. Oh!" "Be of good cheer," said Adion, laughing wholeheartedly. "Your gallant tales are worth the harp strings in Prydain, and you, Taran and Doli, must promise to tell me more of your famous deeds. But first, I must find Lord Gwydion." Taking leave of the companions, Adion mounted and rode on ahead. Fluter looked after him with affection and admiration. "It could be of no small matter if Adion is here. He is one of the bravest men I know. That and more, for he is the heart of a true bard. Some day he will surely be your greatest. You can mark my words." "And our names are indeed known to him?" Taran asked. "And there have been songs about us?" Fluter beamed. "After our battle with the Horned King, yes, I did compose a little something, a modest offering. But it's gratifying to know it is spread. As soon as I fix these wretched strings, I'll be delighted to let you hear it. Soon after midday, when all had refreshed themselves, Cole summoned them to Dolben's chamber. There a long table had been placed with seats on either side. Taran noticed the enchanter had made some attempt at straightening up the disorder of ancient volumes crowding the room. Excuse me. The Book of Three, the heavy tome filled with Dolben's deepest secrets, had been set carefully at the top of a shelf. Taran glanced up at it almost fearfully, sure that it had held far more than Dolben had ever chose to reveal. The rest of the company began to enter when Fluter took Taran's arm and drew him aside as a dark-bearded warrior swept by. "One thing you can be sure of," the bard said under his breath. "Gwydion isn't planning a harvest festival. Do you see who's here?" The dark warrior is more richly attired than any of the company. His high-bridged nose was falcon-like, his eyes heavy-lidded but keen. Only to Gwydion did he bow, then taking his seat at the table he cast a cool glance of appraisal on those around him. "Who is he?" whispered Taran, not daring to stare at this proud and regal figure. "King Morgant of Madoc," answered the bard, "the boldest war leader in Prydain, second only to Gwydion himself. He owes allegiance to the House of Dawn." He shook his head in admiration. "They say he once saved Gwydion's life. I believe it. I've seen that fellow in battle. All ice. Absolutely fearless. If Morgant's to have a hand in this, something interesting must be stirring. Ooh, listen, it's King Smote. Smoit, there we go. You can always hear him before you can see him." A bellow of laughter resounded beyond the chamber, and in another moment a giant red-headed warrior rolled in at the side of Adion. He towered above all in the chamber, and his beard flamed around a face so scarred with old wounds it was impossible to tell where one began and another ended. His nose had been battered to his cheekbones, his heavy forehead was nearly lost in a fierce tangle of eyebrows, and his neck seemed as thick as Taran's waist. "What a bear!" said Fluter with an affectionate chuckle. "But that's not a grain of harm in him. When the lords of the southern Cantrives rose against the sons of Dawn, Smoit was one of the few who stayed loyal. His kingdom is Cantrive Cadafor." Smoit stopped in the middle of the chamber, threw back his cloak, and hooked his thumbs into the enormous bronze belt which strained to bursting about his middle. "Hello, Morgant," he roared. "So they've called you in, have they?" He sniffed ferociously. "I smell blood letting in the wind." He strode up in the stern war leader and fetched him a heavy clout on the shoulder. "Have a care," said Morgant with a lean smile that showed only the tips of his teeth, "that it will not be yours." "Ho, ho, ho!" King Smoit bellowed and slapped his massive thighs. "Very good. Have a care it will not be mine. Never fear, you icicle. I have enough to spare." He caught sight of Fluter. "And another old comrade!" he roared, hurrying to the bard and flinging his arms about him with such enthusiasm that Taran heard Fluter's ribs creak. "My pulse!" cried Smoit. "My body and bones! Give us a tune to make us merry, you butter-headed harp-scraper!" His eye fell on Taran. "What's this? What's this?" He seized Taran with a mighty red-furred hand. "A skinned rabbit? A plucked chicken?" "He is Taran, Dalbin's assistant pig-keeper." "I wish he were Dalbin's cook," cried Smoit. "I've hardly lined my belly." Dalbin began to rap for silence. Smoit strode to his place after giving Fluter another hug. "There may not be any harm to him," said Taran to the bard, "but I think it's safer to have him for a friend." All the company now gathered at the table, with Dalbin and Gwydion at one end, Cole at the other. Let me switch up the music just a tad. King Smoit, overflowing his chair, sat on the enchanter's left across from King Morgant. Taran squeezed in between the bard and Dolly, who grumbled bitterly about the table being too high. To the right of Morgant sat Adion, and beside him Elendil, whom Taran had not seen since morning. Dalbin rose and stood quietly a moment. All turned toward him. The enchanter pulled on a wisp of beard. "I am much too old to be polite," Dalbin said, "and I've no intention of making a speech of welcome. Our business here is urgent, and we shall get down to it immediately. Little more than a year ago, as some of you have good cause to remember," Dalbin went on, glancing at Taran and his companions, "Arorn, Lord of Anuvin, suffered grave defeat when the Horned King, his champion, was slain. For a time the power of the Land of Death was checked, but in Prydain, evil is never distant. None of us is foolish enough to believe Arorn would accept a defeat without challenge." Dalbin continued. "I had hoped for a little more time to ponder the new threat of Anuvin. Time, alas, will not be granted. Arorn's plans have become all too clear. Of them I ask Lord Gwydion to speak." Gwydion rose in turn. His face was grave. "Who has not heard of the Cauldron born, the mute and deathless warriors who serve the Lord of Anuvin? These are the stolen bodies of the slain, steeped in Arorn's cauldron to give them life again. They emerge implacable as death itself, their humanity forgotten. Indeed, they are no longer men, but warriors and weapons of murder, in thrall to Arorn himself. In this loathsome work," Gwydion went on, "Arorn has sought to despoil the graves and burrows of fallen warriors. Now, throughout Prydain, there have been strange disappearances, men suddenly vanishing to be seen no more, and cauldron-born appear where none has ever before been sighted. Arorn has been idle, as I have now learned. His servants dare to strike down the living and bear them to Anuvin to swell the ranks of his deathless host. Thus death begets death, evil begets evil." Taran shuddered. Outdoors the forest burned crimson and yellow. The air was gentle, as though a summer day had lingered beyond its season. But Gwydion's words chilled him like a sudden cold wind. Too well he remembered the lifeless eyes and livid faces of the Cauldron-born, their ghastly silence and ruthless swords. "To the meat of it!" cried Smoit. "Are we rabbits? Are we to fear these cauldron slaves?" "There will be meat enough for you to chew on," answered Gwydion with a grim smile. "I tell you now, none of us has ever set on a more perilous task. I ask your help, for I mean to attack Anuvin itself, to seize Arorn's cauldron and destroy it." That is where we will end for today. Let's see how many chapters we're going to be having in this one. Okay, same as the previous one, 20 chapters. We can do this. As always, y'all, I always tell you, you don't have to watch these videos when they go live. You're more than welcome to watch them in your downtime, leisurely time, nap time, relaxing, chillaxing, maxing time, and just enjoy yourself. Let your imagination run wild, and let the magic of literature always lead you to where you need to go. I love you all, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.